Well, I've long been a fan of the films of Martin Scorsese. Go back to the 70s, 80s, 90s films like Taxi Driver, Goodfellas, Raging Bull, Last Waltz. In many ways, his movies have defined American cinema the past many decades. In fact, the very first YouTube video I ever did back in 2007 was on Scorsese's film The Departed. So I've been watching him for a long time. His most recent movie, much talked about, is Silence, based on the Shushaku Endo novel of the same name. And like all Scorsese's movies, it's got gorgeous cinematography, it's got great acting in both the lead and supporting roles, and it's thematically complex to the point that we'll be talking about it for the next, 100 years. So it's a movie I would warmly recommend that people see. Those who have read the novel know the basic plot lines. It involves these two young Jesuit priests. Were set, by the way, in the mid-17th century in Japan, when the church is going through a time of terrible persecution. These two young Jesuits, played by Andrew Garfield and Adam Driver, are sent to Japan to find out what's going on with their great Jesuit mentor and teacher, Father Ferreira. Rumor has it that Ferreira's been captured, that he's actually apostatized and gone over to the Japanese side. And the two young men just can't believe it, and they've been sent to find out what's going on. So, after a number of adventures, they arrive in Japan. They're taken in by an extraordinary group of people, these lay Japanese Christians, who over many, many decades, despite the absence of priests, have kept the faith alive. And they are overjoyed that these priests have come, and now they see their task as hiding them, protecting them. So things go on for a little while. They're able to minister in kind of a clandestine way. But eventually the authorities get wind of the presence of these priests. And their strategy is very clever. It's to go after the lay people first in the hopes of luring the priests out into the open. So the lay people are arrested and they are tortured. But they prove heroic in their resistance. Maybe the most affecting scene in the movie, the most memorable for me anyway, is this crucifixion scene. So three of the great leaders of the lay Catholic community in Japan are crucified by the seashore. And then the tide very gradually comes in. And basically in the course of 3 or 4 days, these people are drowned in this really horrific manner. And then when their bodies are taken down, they're burned on the seashore. And for all the world, they look like a Holocaust offered to the Lord. Well, in time, the priests themselves are captured, and they are subjected to a similar kind of torture, both physical but mostly psychological. And what they do is they tie it to the suffering of their people. They say, Father, if only you cave in. And what they want them to do is to step on this image of Jesus as a sign of their renunciation of their Christian faith. Father, just give in, just step on this, even in a formal way. Don't even mean it in your heart, just do it, and we will release your friends from their suffering. So that's the way they're being basically tortured. The film focuses on Father Rodriguez, who's played by Andrew Garfield. And for a long time, he resists. He heroically resists, despite this terrible pressure and torture. One of the decisive scenes, a real turning point, is when he is brought into the presence now of Father Ferreira, the man that he's come to find. He discovers that all the rumors are true, that Ferreira has this hero, his Jesuit hero, has in fact gone over to the other side, has renounced his Christian faith, has taken a Japanese name, a Japanese wife, and is now functioning as a kind of philosopher on the public payroll. And Ferreira then, in this, I think, devastating scene, tries to convince this young missionary, give in. This is, I resisted for a time, but it wasn't worth it. I caved in. You should cave in too. Devastating from a psychological standpoint, what this young priest is being put through. At the end of the interview, Ferreira, again, who was sent as a heroic Jesuit, missionary, says, it just won't take in this country. This country's like a swamp. It won't receive the seed of Christianity. Anyway, Rodriguez continues to resist until finally in this decisive moment, he does cave in. Again, under the pressure of torture and with his people being tortured. And look, just do it and we'll release them. And so in this terrible moment, he does step on the image of Jesus. And with that, we hear a cock crow. And so it's the symbol, from St. Peter's betrayal of the Lord, that this is in fact a betrayal. Even though Rodriguez hears a voice that he takes to be the voice of Jesus saying, do it, go ahead, it's okay. And that's one of the great questions in the book and the movie is that the voice of Jesus? Is that his own voice? Is it the voice of the devil? I mean, we don't know. But when he does step on the image, the cock crows, which to me is Endo's way, and I don't know if Scorsese believed it too, but Endo's way of saying this is an act of betrayal. Anyway, the story concludes in a kind of devastating way because you see that Rodriguez walks the path of Ferreira all the way. He does renounce his faith. He's called upon on a regular basis, year in and year out, to do it. And he does. He steps on the image and again renounces his faith. Eventually, he takes a Japanese name, takes a Japanese wife, and he and Ferreira, in fact, conspire with the government to keep all Christian symbols and all that out of Japan. He dies at the age of 64, I think we're told. He's an old man. And he's buried in a Buddhist ceremony. The last scene in the movie, and this is a Scorsese touch, actually, it's not in the novel. The camera actually goes into the coffin, and you see the corpse of Rodriguez holding a little tiny crucifix. So I guess we're meant to believe, okay, in some way, this tortured soul remained a Christian even to the end. So that's how the movie ends. And you say, okay, what do I make of this complicated, strange, unnerving story? Well, I mean, I read the novel years ago. I totally get the beauty of showing the rich complexity of that time, the different pressures all these people were under. But I'll tell you the truth, what was kind of bugging me in the wake of the movie was a lot of the commentary in religious circles, which put a huge stress on this theme of complexity, ambiguity, how difficult, how multivalent faith is, and so on. Here's my problem. I think all this talk about ambiguity and multivalence and difficulty and vacillation and conflict is in service of a cultural elite that likes its Christianity just that way. Now, let me make a little comparison here to make my point. And the comparison is inspired by a certain Ignatius of Loyola, the founder of the Jesuits, right? Who had been a soldier. And if you know the Jesuit spirituality, it's a soldier's spirituality. Well, imagine a group of special ops, let's say from our country, who are sent after being highly trained for the mission. They're sent behind enemy lines somewhere. They're met by loyal people on the ground who, at the risk of their own lives, support them in the mission. The people on the ground are eventually captured, but they are faithful. They don't give in. They don't give up the mission, and they're put to death. Then in time, the special ops themselves are captured, tortured, and they give in. They betray the mission. And in fact, in the course of many decades thereafter, they become paid supporters of the enemy. How would we read that? I doubt sincerely anyone's going to say, you know how rich and multivalent and complex their patriotism is. My guess is fully understanding. I mean, I get it. Under torture, what people do. But I don't think a lot of people would be singing their praises. They would see them as traitors to the cause. See, again, I think the cultural elite in Japan that's displayed in the movie, that's what they wanted. See, they wanted a Christianity that was divided and splintered and unsure and vacillating. They wanted that. It served their purpose, which is why they supported Ferreira and Rodriguez for all these decades. Why they gave them, wives and homes and money and jobs and status. They wanted to display that Christianity. Well, see, I'm afraid that the cultural elite today wants and celebrates the same kind of Christianity. Hey, Christianity, that's okay as long as it's vacillating, unsure, privatized, harmless. Now, go to that last scene, because I know people say, oh, are you being fair to Rodriguez? He does have that little crucifix in his hand. Yeah, okay. Maybe he was, in some deeply interior way, still a Christian. But again, that's what they like. That's the kind of Christianity they want. Hidden away, private, harmless. So here's what I would say in conclusion. Maybe, okay, a strangled half cheer for Rodriguez's Christianity. But I'll tell you, I'll give a full-throated 3 cheers to those heroic lay people that kept the faith alive over many years and who died a horrific death defending their faith. I know the cultural elite of that time and our time will look down on that as, well, the poor things, God bless them. 3 cheers for them, I say.